Creative, it's gonna come to me, creative lubrication. All right, what's up everybody, and welcome to our first edition, our first episode of what we're gonna be calling Brews and Reviews, where we are gonna sit down, talk about bikes, bike products, helmets, computers, whatever, all while drinking a beer. I'm Rob Whelan. I'm normally behind the camera, but I'm sitting here today with André Goulet. Introduce yourself, say what's up.
Hey guys, I'm André. I'm a mechanic at the shop and here to talk about bikes.
So first things first, we're sitting here on the Daft patio. What you drinking, André?
I am drinking Kung Fury. It is a light German wheat ale.
Sweet.
With, actually added Woodruff, I think it's a light syrup.
Did you do a little flavor shot in there?
Yeah, I did. It's very, very good. Nice, sweet aftertaste.
Okay. Yeah. And I've got the coffee milk stout. You can tell by the color. It is not quite noon yet, so I went with the breakfast beer. We got a little caffeine in there, and it's quite tasty. So we're starting with a doozy for our first episode. We're gonna do a full bike review. My bike was recently in the shop getting some repairs, so I borrowed this beauty right here. It is the Norco Optic C2 with the SRAM build kit. I rode it for a couple of weeks and definitely have a few opinions about the bike, so we'll chat about that a little bit. And André, tell us about your bike. How long you been on it, which one is it, and all that.
Yeah, so I picked this up in early May. It's also a 2021 Norco Optic C2, but with the Shimano build spec. So there's a couple differences here and there. Mainly you're gonna have the Shimano drivetrain and the Fox suspension versus the SRAM drivetrain and the RockShox suspension.
All right, and you've done a couple upgrades.
Yeah, I have. So this bike came stock with Stan's Flow wheels. I'm at roots a cross-country guy, so I like a little bit of a lighter wheel. I almost immediately swapped these out for a custom-laced Stan's Crest Mark III wheel, or rim, to an Industry 9 Hydra hub.
All right,
so
sweet.
Makes it a little bit lighter. I find it wakes it up out of the corners a little bit. Definitely maybe not as burly in the downhills as the Flow would be. But,
all right, which this bike does have, and we'll talk about those wheels in a bit. So let's start big, and then we're going to get into the nitty gritty. So overall impression of the bike. So you've been on it all season?
Yeah.
So you've got a number of rides under your belt. What's your overall impression of the bike?
Well, so comparing it to my previous bike, which was a cross-country weapon, cross-country race weapon, it was a Rocky Mountain Element. It feels much burlier. I feel like I can just throw it into anything I want. I think that's mainly due to the Fox 36 fork. Having that extra width in the stanchions really offers a lot of stiffness, and kind of makes me drop into things I probably wouldn't normally.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Cool. So for me, overall impressions of this bike, it's very different than what I'm used to riding. So I'm coming from, it was arguably a burlier bike with the sight, although this has a pretty burly build to it, but 27 fiber to 29, so that was a big change. This is my first time on a 29er, so
oh, is it?
That gave me, that was definitely a different feel. I noticed it right away. Mm-hmm. It feels like a big bike that can handle the terrain. Definitely felt like it was a very punchy bike. The suspension is stiff. The overall bike feel, I would put it in a pretty stiff category. Mm-hmm. Like you can lay into it and the bike is not going anywhere. Yeah. So that was definitely my first impression.
Yeah, I definitely found that too, and I think a lot of that has to do with the 125 millimeters of rear travel.
Yeah.
As opposed to, so it's kind of a mullet setup, right? As opposed to having
parties in the front.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to having like 140 front and back, it's 140 in the front, 125 in the rear. So Norco had an idea of making a trail bike that can also really get up a hill. So.
Yes, for sure. If I was going to name one thing that this bike does amazing, is going uphill.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the drivetrain. So I was on SRAM, you've been on the Shimano build.
Yeah, so I mean the Shimano 12-speed drivetrain is one I'm already familiar with. My last bike, the Element, had 12-speed XTR. This bike is spec'd with 12-speed Shimano XT, and really I've only got good things to say about Shimano drivetrains. Really, I find shifting under power is amazing. The gear range, of course, they had to one-up SRAM with the 51-tooth cassette versus the 50-tooth cassette.
Ouch. It's a big difference right there.
Yeah, and I think another difference is the double click of the shifter.
Yeah.
I think it's a really nice, it's kind of, they call it the sprint click, or I call it the sprint click.
Sprint click, and that's on the Shimano.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's right. So being able to shift down 2 gears when you're trying to get up to speed is often really practical.
Nice, nice. So SRAM on this side, definitely a different feel than what I'm used to. I'm typically a Shimano guy as well, but I have to say, you know, I got a new gravel bike in the spring, which was a Shimano build, or sorry, a SRAM build. Was hesitant, but grew to really like it quite fast. And then riding this one, second experience on a SRAM build, and I'm not going to say I'm a convert, but I am going to say that it is awesome. The shifting was very crisp all the way throughout the whole gear range. Shifting under power, like you said on yours, same thing here. Just felt really firm in the shifting. And the push for up and down is something that I'm not used to. I've always used the pull shift on my Shimano setup.
Yeah, of course.
But since going back to my Shimano setup on my site, now I'm pushing with both, because you got both options with Shimano.
Yeah.
So I have to say that actually changed how I ride a bike.
Yeah.
So I was definitely impressed with the SRAM build.
Yeah.
So it sounds like either way, that bike or this bike,
You really can't go wrong.
you can't go wrong. You're well suited with
similar
the
range.
I didn't mention it's the GX 12 speed.
That's right.
On this one. So yeah, beauty.
So we've talked about a couple things we love about our bikes, but Rob, is there anything that you don't like or that you'd change about the Optic?
Yeah, definitely. And not just because I like to change parts on new bikes. I had two negatives that were kind of standouts for me. Probably not deal breakers, but number one was the brakes. For a bike this size and the terrain that it's designed to ride, I personally felt there wasn't enough stoppy. This is spec'd with, what are they, Dior?
Yeah, they're like an entry-level Shimano 4-piston brake. So
okay, so 4 pistons, you would think that's a lot of stopping power. I felt it was a bit soft, especially with that 200 mil rotor in the front. I was expecting to chuck myself over the bars, and it was more like, whoa, come on, catch up, and then the brakes were there.
Yeah.
I'm coming from XT, 180 mil setup on my bike, and then to these, they just didn't have that clicky Shimano feel to the brakes.
And when you've had the luxuries of XT, it's really hard to go back to anything else.
Absolutely. So that would be my first upgrade, and to anybody who buys this bike, I would make that upgrade right out of the gate. Second one, and this is an easy one, I felt that the wheel set was heavy. They're bigger, obviously, so you know, by virtue of that extra circumference, they're going to be heavier. But I found the tires, or maybe it's set up with tubes right now. So maybe going to tubeless right away and a lighter set of tires, the bike would feel a little bit faster.
Yeah, I mean, you've really got downhill spec tires on there.
Yeah,
in the factory,
and we're not riding downhill terrain here.
That's right. So. Yeah. And in terms of my bike, maybe not cons, but things that I changed from the factory. I opted for a lighter wheel set, like Rob mentioned.
Check.
I did also found it felt a little bit sluggish at first. Definitely.
So what tires did you put on? You got the Schwalbe.
Yeah, for tires, I've got the Schwalbe Racing Ray and Racing Ralph combo.
Okay.
It's a tire set that I swear by. I've raced on for years. Very light, very fast rolling, but can also give you some confidence in the corners.
Sweet. Yeah. All right, so not a lot of negatives.
Not a lot of negatives, no.
So we're halfway through the video. Andre's beer got empty. What are we kicking now?
So it's actually the same beer with a different type of syrup. So previously I had the Woodruff syrup, and this is the raspberry syrup.
There you go, the folks at Daft hooking it up. So we're moving on. We're going to talk about suspension. Very different from bike to bike. You can take this one.
Yeah, so we've got on the SRAM spec bike, we've got RockShox suspension, of course, and on the Shimano spec bike, they've decided to use Fox front and back. The biggest difference you're going to see is the 35mm stanchions on the RockShox pike fork versus the Fox 36mm stanchion.
And that 1mm.
Well, that 1mm, it's going to be, you know, a little bit more stiffness.
Getting that lateral stiffness.
Yeah, it's all about lateral stiffness. You know, a little bit less flex when you're really slamming into a berm.
Yep. Okay.
And as for the rear shock, it's going to be very similar. I think Fox has a little bit more advanced of a dampener, but they're going to be
all right. So this bike is built for what kind of trail?
I'd say it's really a trail bike, right? It's meant for that's fine, but
it is a trail bike.
It is a trail bike. It's really built for going down. I think stock, the spec is a little bit overkill for MTB Kingston.
Okay.
Until you get to the Ridge and Route 66 and maybe Pete's Loop. I found the bike felt a lot faster than my cross-country race bike.
Wow.
On the Ridge and Route 66.
That's quite a statement.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really the extra suspension travel and the extra suspension stiffness really takes, you know, it doesn't take as much momentum out of you when you're rattling over packs of roots or flying over a rock garden. You know, I find it can really hold itself together a little bit better.
Okay, so I've ridden it both in mountain bike Kingston. Of course, not all of our 223 viewers are from Kingston. So let's talk about some other styles of trails, other types of maybe elevation, because we know we don't have a lot of that here in Kingston. So I have a cottage up in Tremblant, so I actually rode this bike up there. And while the trail style is similar in a lot of the trails that I've ridden there anyway, we're talking about a lot more elevation. So a lot of climbing, a lot of enduro kind of trails in that area. So where we're doing a climbing trail, stop at the top, pick your line on the way down kind of setup, a lot like Kingdom Trails, for instance. So I really liked this bike in Tremblant because of it's just a monster on the climbs. You get up there, you feel fresh, and then you've got a really confident bike for the downhills.
Yeah.
So Andre, you sell a few bikes here and there at the shop, maybe more than a few bikes.
Here and there.
If they're available?
Yeah, when they're available.
Who's buying this bike?
I mean, I think this bike is really for anyone who is looking to maybe get into the next level of trail riding, you know, up their technical skills and really get into some technical terrain. I think it's a great bike for the farm. Maybe if you know, once you throw some lighter tires on it, it's a great bike for the farm. It's a great bike to take around Ontario and Quebec. I think it's can really handle just about anything you throw at it.
What about the Horseshoe Bike Park? Are we taking this thing on a chairlift?
I think I would definitely take mine to Horseshoe. Yeah. I think you know, if I were to throw some different tires back on and
pop this set on.
Yeah, throw the stock tires back on and pump the suspension up a little bit. Definitely have some fun on a downhill track.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. All right, thank you guys so much for tuning in to our first episode of Brews and Reviews. I know I had a lot of fun here kicking it with a couple of beers, chatting with Andre about the Norco Optic. Thank you so much to Daft for letting us sit on their patio and hooking up the pints.
Yeah, and if there's anything else that you guys would like to see reviewed, please let us know in the comment section below, and we'll gladly look at your suggestions and maybe take them up on our next video.
All right, if you enjoyed that video, make sure to hammer that like button and subscribe because we've got more coming to you. Thank you very much.
Is that a stolen bike?
If I had to judge by the look of it, yes.